Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to give it just a minute or two for everybody to join the session, get into the webinar, but we're really excited to have a great conversation today, a really accomplished group of women. So we will kick it off soon. Okay. See the number leveling off a little bit, so we will get started. And just putting it out there, this session is being recorded and will be shared with all registrants and will be available on our website following the event today. So welcome everyone. My name is Toni Phelan. I am a program manager for MBA programs at Forte. And thank you so much for joining us today for our Conquer Your Career session titled Entertainment, Sports, and Media. This event is part of Forte's Conquer Your Career virtual series, which offers an inside look at what it's like to be a woman with an MBA working in various industries. So let's get started. So a career in the entertainment, sports, or media industries can be full of excitement, passion, but at the same time have very unique challenges and sometimes barriers to success. So our panelists today have forged their own distinctive paths in these industries. They will discuss the knowledge, skills, and abilities that can help launch MBA women into a successful career in these dynamic fields. So let's get started. First, I'd like to introduce you to Sonia Alexander. Sonia, please tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi. So I just graduated from UT McCombs last May and moved to Houston right after to work at a company called eventellect, which focuses on maximizing total ticket revenue for most professional sports teams in the US. By total ticket revenue, I mean we help price and optimize all ticket groups, so full seasons, half seasons, partial plans, mini plans, single game groups, etc. I am currently aligned to our NBA portfolio, where I help my partner teams maximize their home game revenue and strategize for future growth. Before business school, I attended NYU Stern and then worked in consulting for 4 years. For 4 500 companies, I'm kind of in sports consulting now for partner teams. Before I was working more for corporations across different industries. Yeah, I'm super happy to be here and honored to be on a panel with such amazing women.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sonia. All right. Our next panelist is Claritza Jiménez. Over to you, Claritza.
Hey there. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Claritza Jiménez. I'm currently Senior Director of Marketing Strategy at Paramount CBS News. What that means is that I implement the day-to-day strategy to grow the audiences for three of our biggest news franchises, the CBS Evening News, CBS Mornings, and Face Nation. And I also work on strategic cross-promotion with our CBS stations around the country. We own about 16 of them. I earned my MBA from Darden in 2021 with the intent of making a pivot from a career in journalism over to the business side of media. So my first career was working as a journalist and a producer at Politico, the Washington Post, the Associated Press. So it is possible to do a late career, mid-career pivot. And I would say that the common thread in everything that I've done is I really do believe in the power of media to inform, inspire, entertain, uphold democracy, do all of those good things. And I'm excited to share my path with all of you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next, I'm pleased to introduce you to Sierra Martin. Sierra, let's hear a little bit about you.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here and happy to have the chance to chat with you all today. My name is Sierra Martin. I work at the NBA in our content strategy and innovation group as a senior manager. This title is a little confusing, but basically what that entails is I focus really on the live game broadcast. So when you're watching the game via our direct-to-consumer products. So when you're watching on anything that's not TNT or ESPN, what is that experience like for you? How can I make it more engaging? How can I make it a more seamless process? And then ideally, how can I make you want to then buy League Pass or League Pass Premium? And so this has been a really cool project or role for me. Before that, I attended Wharton, as you can see here. And before that, I was working consulting as well for about 4 years down in Atlanta before sort of making the pivot. So excited to chat with you all a little bit more today.
Thank you so much, Sierra. And next we have Erica Smith. So Erica, please tell us a little bit about your background.
Hey everyone, my name is Erica Smith. I'm a 2011 graduate of Howard University, where I received my BBA in marketing. After graduating from Howard, I worked for nearly 4 years in media and marketing research at Nielsen. And then I decided to transition to receive my MBA at the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University in marketing. After graduating from Kelley, I worked for nearly 7 years at PepsiCo in a variety of roles spanning brand, innovation, and sports marketing. And then finally, today I am partnership director at the WNBA, and I currently reside in Stamford, Connecticut, and work in Manhattan.
Great. Welcome, Erica. And I'm also, last but not least, pleased to introduce you to Jiayi's son. Jiayi, please tell us about yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Jiayi and I'm so excited to be here today. I completed my undergraduate studies at the University of Texas at Austin, where I majored in journalism. And after graduation, I worked as a journalist for like 4 years, covering human rights, technology, and business issues. And while I love storytelling, I wanted to explore a range of like career opportunities, and that led me to pursue an MBA at University of Oxford. Currently, I work in the ESG team at Sony PlayStation, the gaming group under the Sony group. So I do like climate disclosure and reporting, and also trying to see how can we cut CO2 emissions of our consoles. Yeah, and outside of work, I enjoy listening to podcasts, listening to music, and yeah, I'm excited to connect with everyone here. Yeah.
Thank you, Jiayi. So I know we're going to have an amazing conversation today. We will now get started with some questions for our panelists. And as we go today, we may have time for some questions from the audience at the end. So if you have questions for our panelists, please use the Q&A feature to enter your questions. Okay, so our first question is going to be, we're going to go to Erica, then Sierra, then Jiayi. So the question is, how did you know that working in your current industry was the right choice for you? And how did you determine which subsector of, entertainment, sports, media, it's such a large world. How did you determine which one would be most interesting to you? So we'll start with Erica.
Thanks, Tony. So when I think about how I knew that sports was the right industry for me, I think back to the pandemic. In 2020, I was working at Frito-Lay in Texas, and I was working in an innovation role that was extremely developmental and challenging in all the right ways, but honestly very draining. And during the pandemic, everyone was working from home and work kind of took over. I found myself working late into the night each day because you didn't really have the opportunity to be outside and mix and mingle. And I started to think, wouldn't it be awesome if I was working in a role that really aligned more with my passions outside of work, like sports? And several months later, almost like divine intervention, there was a role that popped up in New York City, or really based in Purchase, New York at our headquarters, that was leading the NBA WNBA partnership for the Mountain Dew brand at PepsiCo. And I really did not think I had a shot at this because I did not have sports marketing experience, a few tangential experiences on my Doritos role, but nothing that was really true to the experiences that they were looking for. But thanks to advocacy by my SVP at the time, I had a great word put in for me and was able to land that role in New York. And that was really my introduction to sports marketing. And what the real difference was, I enjoyed my previous roles, but there was a different sense of joy that I brought to the assignment because this was aligned with one of my passion points of basketball. And when you're joyful about your work, you bring your best self to work, you bring your full self to work. And I saw that my performance and just my happiness improved overall. So I knew that it was the right industry for me, and I've been in it ever since. And for me, basketball was definitely the right subsector because that's the sport that I follow the most. And in living in Texas for 4 years, I became a huge Dallas Mavericks fan, found myself at the AAC a lot. Yes, I'm still hurting about the Luka trade. And so I knew that that was really my passion because that is where I went deep on basketball and my NBA fandom overall.
Great. I love that story. So let's hear from Sierra on this one next.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely agree. In a sense, I think for me, sports was something that I always had an interest in, frankly. But I always thought I would do it later. Like, oh, okay, I'll do consulting first, then I'll go to sports, and then it was like, oh, then I'll do tech, and I'll eventually get to sports. And so I kept putting it off, frankly. But after I said there were like kind of two pivot points. So one, very similarly during the pandemic, we were all sort of stuck in the house working. And I was doing consulting at the time, I was doing innovation work. So really focused around workshops. So having to like make in-person workshops virtual, it just the translation wasn't really working. I was like, I got to make a pivot. So that was sort of my why business school pivot. I was like, I got to do something I'm a little more interested in, a little more hands-on, and frankly, just I think overall just more consumer facing. But at the time I thought maybe that'll be tech. And then once again, I'll get to sports eventually. Maybe I'll find a tech role that'll touch sports, and then from there I can pivot. And so I actually interned at TikTok during my business school summer. But it was actually during the time when a lot of roles were still remote, given we were still so close to the pandemic. So I chose to actually double dip. So I did an internship at TikTok, and I also had the time to do an internship at the USTA, focused on the US Open, which was happening in August in New York. And so with that experience, I was like, okay, like I really do like sports. Like this is the time I just have to do it now. And so while TikTok was amazing and I really enjoyed it, I was like, I want an intersection of sports and tech. So when I went back to re-recruit, I came across the role that I'm currently in now. It's expanded some, but the role that I'm in now, and it was the perfect intersection of sort of sports, tech, being able to have impact on how people consume the league, being able to expand sort of the reach of the league globally. And so it sort of checked off all of my boxes. And what, at the end of the day, though, it's still a job. So I had to see if I actually kind of liked it. And I would say like actually being in the role, it sort of confirmed that interest in me, and one being, like I said, being consumer facing, but two, working on something that I'm interested in. I think what's really cool about sports, basketball being my favorite sport, and being able to work on our digital product, some of the things that I'm working on at 2 p.m., I'm seeing in real time when I'm watching the games that evening. And so something I really enjoy about the role and about sports in general. So.
Awesome. Getting to see your impact in real time is pretty cool. Okay, Jiayi, let's hear from you.
Yeah. So first question, why entertainment industry? I think for me, choosing to work in the entertainment industry is just like a natural extension of my passions and interest. I just observe myself. What do I love to do when I'm free? It's always movies, music, and games. They just make me feel I'm alive. I I've kept a personal record of every movie and TV series I've watched since high school, writing down my reflections and thoughts, and I even like Google like the movie's history, social issues behind the movies. And also I enjoy exploring different genres and attending live music events, also play games a lot when I'm free. So when I was thinking like what industry should I enter, it just popped in my mind, just entertainment industry, because I just love it so much. And I realized that if I worked in the industry, I could be part of this creative journey that brings this powerful experience to so many people like me. I still remember once I was attending a Sony event where they showcased all the movies and music like the company had produced, and seeing it all in one place, I could feel an overwhelming sense of excitement. It just reinforced that this was where I wanted to be. Yeah, so this is how I chose the entertainment industry. And about the subsector, actually, I kind of met my like my current boss in like a networking event. So it's not, and later I know that he's working for like Sony PlayStation, and that's how I kind of chose the subsector. But I really like playing games as well. So yeah, I enjoy being here as well. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so our next question, moving on, is going to be for Sonia. Sonia, I would love to know some unique advantages to working in your industry and then some challenges that you've maybe faced.
Yeah, so some advantages. It's super dynamic and fast-paced. The people that you're working with are genuinely so passionate about their teams and their brands that you genuinely want to do good for them. So it's fun being a part of that atmosphere, because being consulting before for Fortune 500 companies, like people were a little more apathetic. The people that you work with in sports are like obsessed with their teams, and it's really cool to be a part of that energy. The recent Luka trade that Erica mentioned completely rocked the NBA world and affected our pricing strategy for a lot of our partner home games. So it's fun because there is no day that's the same. You just need to constantly be on top of things and react quicker than the market. Some challenges is it's still pretty male dominated, at least at my company and the partner teams that I work with. So there are a lot of times where I'm the only woman on a call of 10 to 15 guys. And I'm relatively new to the sports world, so I've been playing catch up in terms of, knowing what's happening or what's happened historically. So it's very easy for me to feel imposter syndrome. So I have to constantly remind myself that I earned a spot at this table and that I deserve to be here. But I mean, honestly, it's a really fun, exciting place to be. And I love going to work every single day.
Thank you, Sonia. All right, our next question is, how does your work have an impact at your organization? And what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? So we'll start with Claritza, and then we'll go to Erica and Jiayi.
Sure. So my work supports the network's goals of growing the audiences for some of our biggest news shows. I mentioned CBS Evening News, CBS Mornings, Face the Nation, if you're a political news junkie. And we are well aware that it is an incredibly competitive media landscape. We know that you can just grab your phone and get the news, download an app, listen to a podcast. So we are well aware that digital and social media have become increasingly the go-to destinations, the go-to ways that Americans consume their news. However, when there is a big news moment, when there is huge breaking news, people still turn to television. They want to go to that familiar, trusted voice to get their news, especially during big live events. So we know that there is still a place for television, especially live television. So with that in mind, my job as a strategist, the bulk of my job is a strategist, and the network is to identify the insights and what is relevant to the news audiences that we want to target, and then how do we position our shows in a way that still resonates with them. We know that we are not an app, we are not a social media platform, but there is still something that is valuable to the news consumer, and my job is to dig into that, really leverage it and use it in a way to, again, position our shows to make them still appealing to news audiences. So in my world, the audience is the customer. And like in any business, you want to keep those loyal customers coming back, i.e. the viewers. You want that retention. And then you also want to acquire new customers, growth. So you want to continue to retain that loyal base of customers, and you want to continue growing the business with new customers. So that's really the way that I look at my role as a strategist. How do we continue to grow our viewers, i.e. the customers? And ultimately that feeds back into the goals of the network, which is to, stay competitive in a really tough media environment.
Thank you for that perspective. Erica, over to you.
Yes, there's actually a lot of overlap. So I work on the partnerships team at the WNBA, which is one of the revenue generating teams, such as business development, media rights. So on the partnerships team, our job is to oversee the assets in a particular sponsorship agreement. So we have sponsors such as Delta, Bumble, Deloitte, Opel, Mael. We have a set of sponsors that exclusively sponsor the WNBA. And in exchange for their sponsorship fee, they receive a set of assets. Assets could include tickets to games, rights to activate at our tentpole events like WNBA All-Star or Draft. It could include a media fund. So those are just a sample of some of the assets that a partner receives. And I oversee a team of 4 who works on these individual partners to make sure that all of those assets are fulfilled in a contractual year. And similar to what Claritza is saying, we, as the partnerships team, are trying to keep our existing partners happy, because even though there is a lot of demand for the WNBA due to the unprecedented viewership and attendance last season, it's always easier to retain a customer than to acquire a new one. And so we want to make sure that we are fulfilling all those assets and coming up with new ideas or upsell opportunities to have our partners want to invest even more in a contractual year or season. And then to show the results of the sponsorship and how the WNBA positively impacted each of those brands, whether it helped grow brand awareness or consideration, purchase intent. or even community impact. So that's essentially the day-to-day of my role and how we impact the organization.
Very cool. Thank you. And Jiayi.
Yeah. So my role in ESG at Sony Interactive Entertainment mainly includes like two things. First is climate disclosure. So what I do is that like for example, like I've been like involved in some like European like regulations reporting to like ensure transparency in how we report on like climate related risks and sustainability efforts. So I kind of helped organize and facilitate workshops with internal stakeholders to help them understand how environmental factors impact our business and what all we can do in help like drive change to kind of raise the wellness of sustainability internally. And second thing is that we also support lots of local nonprofits. For example, in the US, we funded nonprofits that kind of increase the like number of girls in the gaming industry. And in the UK, we also support some like youth-related like nonprofits. So using my past journalism skills, I can document the changes we help bring and how we kind of collaborated with these local nonprofits. So my day-to-day work is like, usually I have meetings with some internal stakeholders and also our partner organizations, analyzed climate-related disclosures documents, align strategies with my manager, and like collaborate with cross-functional teams as well. So yeah, it's kind of my job.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, our next question is going to be for Claritza. So since the media, entertainment, sports sectors have, at least historically, really prioritized industry experience and networking, how can our attendees, or how maybe did you communicate the value of an MBA when you were going through recruitment or job searching?
Yes, so I should divide that question into two separate answers. So there are those with an MBA who are seeking a career in media, sports, and entertainment that have very technical skills, such as in finance, business intelligence, data analytics. That can be further bolstered by an MBA. And that in the recruiting process is going to be very obvious why those technical skills can be very valuable in a role. I would say for the rest of us, including myself, I came, as I mentioned, from a journalism background. I think the sell is much more different because you need to be able to explain how that MBA experience added value to your career, when in reality, we know that in media, sports, and entertainment, there's a lot of value that is put on getting the internships, on the networking relationships. So in my case, something that I really had to become adept at, especially in the interview process, is to communicate how the MBA really changed the way that I tackled problems. It changed my thinking. It made me a lot more of a structured thinker, a more structured communicator. And some would argue that those are those soft skills, but they're still incredibly valuable no matter what field you go into. It would often come up in my interview process. You've had a career as a journalist. You did not need this MBA to truly make a pivot. And I had to constantly make the case that actually being in a classroom where I had to go through probably over 150 business case studies did make me a much more strategic problem solver. It made me a stronger communicator. It made me more agile. It made me way more confident in being able to walk into a room and tackle a problem in an area that I probably hadn't been exposed to before. So I would encourage those in the call that are really wanting to pursue this path to be prepared for that question, because unless you come from a finance, data analytics kind of background that is very technical, and it's obvious as to why that MBA was needed in order to work in the media industry, you really need to make a case for yourself in terms of the value of the MBA.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you so much. We're going to go to Sierra for our next question. So how might our attendees facilitate a successful career pivot into your field? So leveraging maybe business school experience to break into one of these industries that they haven't had experience in before.
Yeah, definitely. And I see that the questions kind of popped up a lot in the chat as well. So I think there's a few different ways to pivot or make the switch. And I think sports and entertainment in general can seem pretty daunting just because it is somewhat of a niche industry. And there's a lot of interest, and sometimes like, how do I break in? How do I like break in, get my foot in the door? And so I would say before, I guess, like the business school, like approach and all of that, I think one thing that I think is a little bit more general advice, especially for those who are still on the fence about getting an MBA, or just thinking about other pivots or other kind of questions around there, is sports and media is it's a growing industry. It's an expanding industry. You look at sports is media. So when I think of like a NBA game or a W game, your quote unquote competition isn't an NFL game. It can honestly be the new release on Netflix or the new show on Hulu. And so when you think about sports and media as basically all like an all-encompassing entertainment, I think there's ways when you think of making a pivot, what are other ways to get into entertainment? And maybe then I can switch into sports more specifically, or vice versa, if that makes sense. So I think one thing that's important to know is, what is your interest in sports? What is your interest in media? What is your interest in entertainment? For me, I was really interested in the tech and like digital aspect. And so how can I work in tech and media, and then maybe then make that pivot into sports? And so if you're, someone who has a background in finance and, you want to do creative marketing for the W, that's a lot to switch. So maybe taking it in bite-sized chunks. So, I'm trying to switch from finance into marketing, and then I'm trying to switch from marketing maybe at JP Morgan Chase to marketing at the NFL. And so I think it's important to kind of break down, what is your interest? What are you trying to pivot into? And then what are the bite size, or what are the steps that make the most sense to make that overall larger pivot? And I think one thing that was really helpful for me and why I ended up getting my MBA was because honestly, I did a lot of LinkedIn stalking, and I was like, who are the people out there who have my dream job? And then from there, I looked at what did they do to get their dream job. So the benefits of LinkedIn is I can follow someone's career journey from when they, were serving fries at McDonald's, if they list it, all the way until they're like CEO now. And with that, I can say, okay, they worked in consulting for 4 years, and then they got their MBA, and then they, took this entry level or post MBA role at this company. And then from there, 2 years in, they were promoted, or 3 years in, they made a pivot and moved somewhere else. And so it's not to say that I needed to follow these steps step by step, but hey, okay, I saw 4 amazing women in roles that I really would like to see myself in. What are the similarities, and what are some of the career moves that they made that make sense for me and where I'm at now, and where I can then pivot. And so I think that made it a little bit more attainable. It didn't seem so daunting as someone was like, I just want to work in sports. And then I would also say outside of that as well, yeah, just in general, like looking on LinkedIn, looking at different roles, flagging different positions so that you're aware when companies are opening up certain opportunities. And then also taking on opportunities, even if they aren't necessarily paid or roles in themselves. So I think in an age where, you can volunteer, you can be a content creator, you can sort of create some of your own opportunities. Where are there opportunities near you that will allow you to touch sports that you can put on your resume? So like I volunteered with Together for the Pride Parade. And with them, I was then able to meet other people who were volunteering, was able to build those connections. And then when I was looking for roles or looking for opportunities coming out of business school, I had connections there. So, it may seem like there's no way I can touch sports or there's nothing I can do. Well, maybe there's something you can do that's not necessarily a role or an internship, but it's an opportunity for you to at least meet other people. And then from there, you can, build those relationships and kind of go from there. So
Those are really great strategies. Thank you, Sierra. Claritza, I know you have to jump off, but before you leave, do you have any resources or recommendations for attendees to stay informed about, the constant disruption facing the media and entertainment sectors right now?
Yes, so I am a big believer that you have to become a student of the game. You have to become a voracious consumer of what is happening in entertainment, media, and sports. I work in media, and by extension of working at Paramount, also in entertainment. And I'm still reading religiously all of the trades and the sites so that I can keep up with what's happening. So I would say some of the obvious ones: The Hollywood Reporter ad age, variety, deadline. Those should be a mainstay, hopefully in your inbox. At least you can sign up for the newsletters. Axios also has a really good media vertical. The New York Times and the Wall Street Journal also do really great media reporting. And this is especially important if you're trying to make a transition and you're coming from a different background, real estate, finance, consulting. You need to be fluent in the language of media. And I've noticed the difference when, we're talking to prospective applicants or, candidates who are interested in working at Paramount. And you can just tell the people that are doing their homework and really learning the industry, and those who just enjoy consuming the content, and they sort of confuse that with wanting to work in the industry. And there's a difference between those two. You can enjoy the content, the entertainment, the media, but do you actually know the business of the industry? So I will leave you with that. Unfortunately, I have to jump off. Feel free to look for me on LinkedIn. I wish I could stay on the panel. Everybody here is so amazing. I'm learning from everyone. And hopefully we'll be in touch. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Claritza. All right, we've got a few more questions for our other panelists. So Sonia, we'll head over to you. So how might our attendees position themselves for success as they navigate pursuing a career in these industries that might not be always as predictable as other industries?
Yeah, so exactly what Claritza was saying, like read, stay updated on what's happening in both sports business and sports in general. So I personally read Sports Business Journal every single morning and every night. And it helps me not only with small talk with clients before meetings, but also kind of adds color to the wider strategic initiatives that I'm doing for my partner teams. And be adaptable. Think about things on a case-by-case basis. For example, like two of my partner teams are the Utah Jazz and the Chicago Bulls. They have entirely different markets. So Sunday games do not sell well in Utah like they would for a metropolitan area or even another market that's more medium-sized. So it's crucial to understand your clients and their unique priorities and their nuance. But I mean, mainly just staying on top of news, both from a business perspective, but then also what's happening, because that will affect your day-to-day and like your strategy overall.
Great, thank you. Our next question is for Erica. So I would love to hear, how have the other women in your network been a help to you throughout your career? And what are some ways that you have personally championed women in your field?
Thanks, Tony. Women have been everything in my career. When I think about the innovation role that I referenced earlier at Frito-Lay and the person who championed me to move to New York for the sports marketing role, that was a woman, Marissa Solis, who is now the chief brand officer at the NFL. And at the time I was working on her team at Frito-Lay, and because of what she observed of me, she took a chance. And so she didn't have to do that. And so I really think back as that being a stepping stone to where I am today. And then from the transition from PepsiCo to the WNBA, I was really reluctant at first to tell my NBA partners that I was interested in working at the league. I wanted to hold on to my job just in case things didn't work out. So I would do some blind applications, but I realized I need to tap into the power of my network. And when this WNBA partnership director role was released, I actually reached out to two female VPs who I'd worked really closely with at PepsiCo, and they championed me. They made sure that my resume reached the hiring manager. They made sure that I got into the interview process. And so, to this day, I know I wouldn't be in this role without them, because otherwise, sometimes you end up being just a number if you don't have those relationships at the organization you're trying to work at. All the women in my interview process were also huge advocates, and I work with really powerful women today. I'm only three levels between myself and Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner, and I have female leaders every step of the way, and it's just so empowering. So I have been blessed with a lot of advocates throughout the years who have been women, and I'm trying to pay it forward. Doing panels like this, usually when I'm asked, I want to give back because I believe in what Forte is doing. I also have 4 people on my team who are all women. I'm advocates for them, not only just from a job responsibility standpoint, but one of them is interested in pursuing her MBA, and others are interested in moving up through the organization. So I'm giving them that feedback to help sharpen their skills to get to the next level. And then even just with LinkedIn reach outs, I definitely try to connect with people and share my advice and my story. Each one teach one, and trying to pay it forward.
Thank you, Erica. We very much appreciate you being here. Our next question is for Jiayi. So I would love to switch gears a little bit and hear about how someone might overcome the challenges of being maybe a cross-cultural team member, and how do you turn your unique background into a strength within a team?
Sure. So I think being part of the cross-cultural team can be both challenging and rewarding. So for me, I grew up in China. I started my career in the US, and now I'm working in London. I've experienced different kind of workplace cultures and communication styles, and I think there are a few strategies I can share. I think the first is that just be naturally curious. I remember when I first started working in the US, I sometimes felt unsure about how to join conversations, especially like in informal settings. Now working in London with like British colleagues, I had that same feelings as well initially. So now I realized that curiosity is the key. So I kind of start to like actively engage in small talk, just ask some questions. If I don't know anything, just ask them. And this can also help build like stronger connections with people, not only in your team, but also in other teams as well. And I think the second thing is that recognize the value of our unique perspective. So for me, sometimes I doubted whether my ideas would be valuable, but I've learned that coming from a different background allows you to notice things others might overlook, or share insights on like how similar challenges are addressed in your home country. So these contributions can add depth and definitely new angles to discussions. And the last strategy I want to share is that engage socially and share about your culture. So like, for example, like actively participating in team events, and also like casual gatherings can help build rapport. But also you can kind of sharing aspects of your culture as well, like bring some small gifts from your home country, or just discussing some cultural traditions can be a great way to connect with your colleagues and create a more inclusive team environment as well. Yeah, but I'm also still in my way to navigating this. So reach out to me if you also have some ideas and we can discuss. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you, Jiayi. Okay, Sierra, can you talk a little bit about what are the kind of hot areas, or what you would maybe think of, the most active, new, up and coming areas within entertainment, sports, and media right now, and where are the opportunities for people who really want to break in?
Yeah, I can start, but I think actually with the panel, it's probably can talk to a few different pockets, but I can speak to like the sort of streaming side of things. So and I definitely echo the sentiment around like staying up to date on trends. So whether that's, making sure you're signed up for certain newsletters to come, or thinking things like front office sports, or there's a few like women's focused newsletters. So blanking on the names right now, but can share those lately. But yeah, signing up just to subscribe and making sure you're kind of up to date on what's happening in the world of sports and entertainment. But I would say one of the big things, especially that's prevalent now, the NBA in particular just recently signed a new media deal. And so for the first time, we'll have one, or I guess say 3 different media partners. And that means that you'll be able to watch NBA games on NBC and therefore Peacock, continue to watch them on ESPN, which is a deal with Disney, and then Amazon Prime, which is a new partner, and for the first time, a tech partner, primary tech partner that we'll have. And that I think really follows the growing trend when it comes to watching sports and watching entertainment, where people are leaning more on streaming versus the traditional linear networks. And so we're able to reach fans in a different way. Ideally, that it will allow a little bit of a pivot to a more traditional TV watcher, to the way that fans tend to watch now, which is more on the go on their phone, as they're watching other things via internet. Most people are cable, I guess, viewership is declining, I should say. And so trying to meet people where they are. This will also allow sports. And I think in general, we're seeing this with deals signed with companies like Apple and Apple TV with MLS, the NFL being on Netflix. This is allowing fans from all over the world now to be able to watch games live, I should say, at the same time. And so it's definitely changing the way that fans are able to engage with sports, and sports leagues are able to engage with fans, which I find very interesting. And so that'll continue to change also the way folks view games. So, you know, people are fans of watching a traditional broadcast, but you're also seeing an interest in sort of like the podcast or like influencer commentators. So what does that mean when or like streaming while watching the game? And so I think it's just changing the way that folks are viewing the game, engaging with the game, and which is great because at least at the league, we like to say 99% of fans never step foot into an arena. And so you want to make sure that you are reaching them in any way. And I'm sure the same can be applied to other leagues as well as to other forms of media and entertainment as well. So those are the trends, I guess, that I would say I'm seeing, but I'm sure partnerships and ticket sales are probably a whole different other change, but a lot of shift, I guess I should say.
Great. Thank you, Sierra. Okay, our last panel question before we move hopefully to maybe one or two audience questions. Our last question is for Sonia. So Sonia, can you talk a little bit about how you balance the many competing priorities in your life? So whether that's family, friends, and other important interests outside of work.
Yeah. So in sports, or I guess NBA specifically, it's a 7-month season. There's a lot to do during the off season to kind of catch up. So it's a you're on the clock all the time. There are games every single night. There are games on the weekends. There are games most of the year. So it can get challenging. I think the best advice to give is just you have to set boundaries, and you need to join a company that respects them. You will have your stretch weeks, but if you work in a flexible work environment, there are ways to maintain like I'm a very social person. I have a big social life, and that's really important to me. I like when I work my workout classes, so maybe I work 9 to 6, go to workout class, log back on if I need to. This past weekend, I was actually skiing in Vail and I got snowed in and I missed 2 flights in a row. So I was in the mountains, like hotspotting on my phone, getting things done, but I was at a company that allows a level of flexibility and understands and doesn't hold it against me. So I think it's a combination of personal boundary setting, but then also joining the right company culture and asking the right questions before you join an organization, so you don't get stuck in a toxic environment where it's harder to boundary set without repercussions.
That's great advice. Doing your research, asking the right questions in the interview process is so key. All right. Well, thank you all. I think we have time for maybe one audience question. I'm gonna try to combine a couple. So we talked a lot about, needing to have those sponsors in the room, needing to have those mentors, needing to have those people to get you into the right positions. How do you make those connections? Some really tangible tips. And then we all hear about kind of, I don't want to call it the hidden job market, but kind of where there are roles that maybe aren't posted, or you're like, it's coming up. And how do you kind of put your finger on the pulse of that? You can answer either or both of those questions, whoever wants to jump in.
I can go first. So for the first part, in regards to finding like mentors and sponsors, I think for those who are attending business school or planning to apply to business school, I think one big one is reaching out to your alum who are in spaces or in roles that you are interested in pursuing. And so during my time at Wharton, well, I'll say this in general, since sports and media and entertainment is a little bit of a smaller industry, a niche industry, I think it's a little bit easier sometimes to find folks or fellow alum because there's not normally that many who are in sports. And so using that as an advantage. So as a Black woman interested in sports, there were only a few who I could even reach out to from Wharton who were like involved enough to want to pursue. So actually my mentor is Bethany Donovan, who works at the W. And so I was connected with her my like first year at Wharton, and we just stayed close ever since. And so she would not only give me insight into things happening at let's say the W or at the NBA, but sports leagues, sports in general, when it came to roles, opportunities, trends, where she saw certain things going. Given my interests, what are some other ways to sort of navigate or pivot into the league? So I have to say, definitely utilizing your alumni network. And reaching out to your career services, they're normally more than happy to make that connection for you or that introduction email for you, which I think is really great, which sort of leads to sort of that hidden market question. Once you are able to make certain connections, especially those in higher or leadership positions looking out for you, they're able to provide you with some of that insight. So it might be, hey, they understand this work is coming down the pipeline. We are in the final, negotiations with the contract, or understanding just some macro trends that will affect certain job openings and opportunities. And so having those connections kind of leads to number two, where it's like, okay, I know this is coming. I can give you a little bit of insight as well. And then I would also say, I know it can be annoying, but those roles that are posted on LinkedIn, sometimes it's like, okay, well, maybe they're posted, but they went with something internal. I think looking at them from a larger scale and say, this is a trend. So I'm seeing a lot of partnerships roles being posted across the board. I'm seeing a lot of, media type roles being posted. I think that's a good thing just to pay attention to understand where the market and where the industry is leading or going, to have an understanding of sort of where you may want to pivot or at least pick up certain skill sets.
Excellent advice. Anyone else want to chime in on this one?
Yeah, I can. So I'm probably the outlier here, and I cold applied to this job. I went through 5 rounds of interviews and I got it. I was not trying to get into sports. I love that I'm here. I don't see myself anywhere else now. But I am also the outlier at my company. So pretty much everyone at my company comes from 2 main funnels of recruitment. So the sports management program at Rice is the undergrad main recruitment funnel. And then MIT has a really big sports business and analytics conference every single year. I think it's coming up in March. And so my advice is in business school, you just have endless opportunity. There are infinite panels that you can join, conferences you can attend, people you can connect with, and people are so eager to talk to you as a business student to take advantage of it. Go to those conferences, like cold message people on LinkedIn. Like people are always happy to help out students in general too, but especially when you are a student, people are super eager to help.
For sure, take advantage of that time. Anyone else?
Yeah, I love the advice that Sierra and Sonia presented. In addition to that, I would say if you're in an MBA program, if you are not sure which alumni to reach out to, make sure to tap into your career services department and maximize that resource to the fullest. Sometimes I think that people are a little bit reluctant to utilize those services, but just make sure that you're holding your career coaches accountable. Sports Business Journal has a conference every year called Game Changers that I would recommend attending. I was just looking it up. There's a Women in Sports and Events network that is based in New York. If you want to become a member or attend some of those events. So just a few other options, but I love what Sonia said too. Sometimes you just apply for the job and you look at that posting on LinkedIn, you find out who the recruiter is, like get scrappy, find out people who work on the team, and shoot your shot. So never count yourself out.
I love that. All right. Okay, well, I think that's all the time we have for today, unfortunately. I am going to share my screen one more time here. All right, I just want to thank all of our participants today who asked so many thoughtful questions. You had, very active in the chat. We love to see it. And a huge, huge thank you once again to our panelists for sharing your expertise, your lived experiences, all of your wonderful advice for our audience today. I wish we had more time, but unfortunately we don't. So we hope everyone enjoyed this Conquer Your Career session. Please follow us on our social media platforms. Visit our website. There's a lot more helpful information on careers and professional development topics there, and so many great resources for you to explore. All right, one more huge thank you, and I hope that everyone has a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.